So we're going to continue with Letting in the Jungle from the Jungle Books. Mowgli is now dealing with the consequences of having killed Shere Khan and taunting the hunter Buldeo. I've been reading Buldeo with more of an Afrikaans accent. Apparently he is supposed to be Indian, but I'll keep doing the same voice for Buldeo that I have been doing. What they found out is that Buldeo is going to kill Mowgli, and then he's going to burn the people that took care of Mowgli when Mowgli was living in the village as witches. So we pick up from there. The charcoal burners looked around cautiously and thanked their stars that they had not. But they had no doubt that so brave a man as Buldeo would find him if anyone could. The sun was getting rather low, and they had an idea that they would push on to Buldeo's village and see that wicked witch. Buldeo said that though it was his duty to kill the devil child, he could not think of letting a party of unarmed men go through the jungle, which might produce the wolf demon at any minute, without his escort. He therefore would accompany them, and if the sorcerer's child appeared, well, he would show them how the best hunter in the Seoni dealt with such things. The Brahmin, he said, had given him a charm against the creature that made everything perfectly safe. "What says he? What says he? What says he?" the wolves repeated every few minutes, and Mowgli translated until he came to the witch part of the story, which was a little beyond him, and then he said that the men and women who had been so kind to him were trapped. "Does man trap man?" said Bagheera. "So he says. I cannot understand the talk. They are all mad together. What have Messua and her man to do with me, that they should be put in a trap? And what is all this talk about the red flower? I must look to this. Whatever they would do to Messua, they will not do till Buldeo returns." And so Mowgli thought hard, with his fingers playing around the haft of his skinning knife, while Buldeo and the charcoal burners went off valiantly in single file. "I go hot-footed to the man-pack. I go hot-foot back to the man-pack," Mowgli said at last. "And those?" said Gray Brother, looking hungrily after the brown backs of the charcoal burners. "Sing them home," said Mowgli with a grin. "I do not wish them to be at the village gates till it is dark. Can ye hold them?" Gray Brother bared his white teeth in contempt. "We can head them round and round in circles like tethered goats, if I know a man." "That I do not need. Sing to them a little, lest they be lonely on the road, and, Gray Brother, the song need not be of the sweetest. Go with them, Bagheera, and help make that song. When night is shut down, meet me by my village. Gray Brother knows the place." "It is no light hunting work for a man-cub. When shall I sleep?" said Bagheera, yawning, though his eyes showed that he was delighted with the amusement. "Me to sing to naked men, but let us try." He lowered his head so that the sound would travel, and cried a long, "Good hunting!" a midnight call in the afternoon, which was quite awful enough to begin with. Mowgli heard it rumble and rise and fall and die off in a creepy sort of whine behind him, and laughed to himself as he ran through the jungle. He could see the charcoal burners huddle in a knot, old Baloo's gun barrel waving like a banana leaf to every point of the compass at once. Then Gray Brother gave a "Yalla hi! Yalla ha!" call for the buck driving. When the pack drives Nagali, the big blue cow before them, and it seemed to come from the very ends of the earth, nearer and nearer and nearer, till it ended in a shriek snapped off short. The other three answered till even Mowgli could have vowed that the pack was in full cry, and then they all broke into the magnificent morning song in the jungle, with every turn and flourish and grace note that a deep-mouthed wolf of the pack knows. This is a rough rendering of the song, but you must imagine what it sounds like when it breaks in the afternoon hush of the jungle. "One moment past our bodies cast no shadow on the plain. Now clear and black they stride our track, and we run home again. In morning hush each rock and bush stands hard and high and raw, that give the call, good rest to all, that keep the jungle law. Now horn and pelt our peoples melt in covert and to abide. Now crouched and still to cave and hill our jungle barons glide. Now stark and plain men's oxen strain that draw the new yoked plough. Now stripped and dread, the dawn is red above the lit talao. Ho, get to lair, the sons of flare behind the breathing grass, and creaking through the young bamboo, the warning whispers pass. By day made strange, the woods we range, with blinking eyes we scan, while down the skies the wild duck cries, to day, the day, the day, to man. The dew is dried that drenched our hide or washed away our way, and where we drink the puddled bank is crisping into clay. The traitor dark gives up each mark of stretch or hooded claw, then hear the call, good rest to all that keep the jungle law. But no translation can give the effect of it, or the yelping scorn the four threw into each word of it, as they heard the trees crash when the men hastily climbed up into the branches, and Buldeo began repeating incantations and charms. Then they lay down and slept, for, like all who live by their own exertions, they were of a methodical cast of mind, and no one can work well without sleep. Meantime, Mowgli was putting the miles behind him, 9 to the hour, swinging on, delighted to find himself so fit after his cramped months among men. The one idea in his head was to get Messua and her husband out of the trap, whatever it was, for he had a natural mistrust of traps. Later on, he promised himself he would pay his debts in the village at large. It was twilight when he saw the well-remembered grazing ground and the dahak tree where Gray Brother had waited for him on the morning that he killed Shere Khan. Angry as he was at the whole breed and community of man, something jumped up in his throat and made him catch his breath when he looked at the village roofs. He noticed that everyone had come in from the fields unusually early, and that instead of getting to their evening cooking, they gathered in a crowd under the village tree, and chattered and shouted. "Men must always be making traps for me, or they are not content," said Mowgli. "Last night it was Mowgli, but that night seems many rains ago. Tonight is Messua and her man. Tomorrow, for very many nights after, will be Mowgli's turn again." He crept along the outside wall till he came to Messua's hut, and looked through the window into the room. There lay Messua, gagged and bound hand and foot, breathing hard and groaning. Her husband was tied to the galley-painted bedstead. The door of the hut was opened into the street. The door of the hut that opened into the street was shut fast, and 3 or 4 people were sitting with their backs to it. Mowgli knew the manners and customs of the villagers very fairly. He argued that so long as they could eat and talk and smoke, they would not do anything else, but as soon as they had fed, they would begin to be dangerous. Buldeo would be coming in before long, and if his escort had done its duty, Buldeo would have a very interesting tale to tell. So he went in through the window, and stooping over the man and the woman, cut their thongs, pulling out the gags, and looked round the hut for some milk. Messua was half wild with pain and fear. She had been beaten and stoned all the morning, and Mowgli put his hand over her mouth just in time to stop a scream. Her husband was only bewildered and angry, and sat picking dust and things from out of his torn beard. I knew he would come," Messua sobbed at last. "Now do I know he is my son," and she hugged Mowgli to her heart. Up to that time Mowgli had been perfectly steady, but now he began to tremble all over, and that surprised him immensely. Why are these thongs? Why have they tied thee?" he asked after a pause. "To be put to death for making a son of thee. What else?" said the man sullenly. "Look, I bleed." Messua said nothing, but it was at her wounds that Mowgli looked, and they had him grit his teeth when he saw the blood. "Whose work is this?" said he. "There is a price to pay." The work is of all the work of all the village. I was too rich, I had too many cattle. Therefore she and I are witches, because we gave thee shelter. I do not understand. Let Messua tell the tale. I gave thee milk, Nathu. Dost thou remember? Messua said timidly. Because thou wast my son, whom the tiger took, because I loved thee very dearly. They said I was thy mother, the mother of a devil, and therefore worthy of death. And what is a devil? Said Mowgli. Death have I seen. The man looked up gloomily, but Messua laughed. See, she said to her husband, I knew. I said that he was no sorcerer. He is my son, my son. Son or sorcerer? What good will that do us? The man answered. We will be dead already. We be as dead already. Yonder is the road to the jungle, Mowgli pointed through the window. Your hands and feet are free. Go now. We do not know the jungle, my son, as thou knowest, Messua began. I do not think that I could walk far. And the men and women would be upon our backs and drag us here again, said the husband. Said Mowgli, and he tickled the palm of his hand with the tip of his skinning knife. I have no wish to do harm to any of this village yet, but I do not think they will stay thee. In a little while they will have much else to think upon. Ah! He lifted his head and listened to shouting and tramping outside. So they have let Buldeo come home at last. He was sent out this morning to kill thee, Messua cried. Didst thou meet him? Yes, I met him. He has a tale to tell, and while he was telling it, there is time to do much. But first, I will learn what they mean. Think where you would go, and tell me when I come back. He bounded through the window and ran along again outside the wall of the village till he came upon earshot of the crowd round the peepul tree. Buldeo was lying on the ground, coughing and groaning, and everyone was asking him questions. His hair had fallen about his shoulders. His hands and legs were skinned from climbing up trees, and he could hardly speak. But he felt the importance of his position keenly. From time to time he said something about devils and singing devils and magic enchantment, just to give the crowd a taste of what was coming. Then he called for water. Bah! Said Mowgli. Chatter, chatter, talk, talk. Men are blood brothers of the Banderlog. Now he must wash his mouth with water. Now he must blow smoke. And when all this is done, he has still his story to tell. They are very wise people, men. They will leave no one to guard Messua till their ears are stuffed with Buldeo's tales. And I grow as lazy as they. He shook himself and glided back to the hut. Just as he was at the window, he felt a touch on his foot. Mother, said he, for he knew that tongue well, what dost thou hear? I heard my children singing through the woods and followed the one I loved best, Little Frog. I have a desire to see the woman who gave thee milk, said Mother Wolf, all wet with dew. They have bound and mean to kill her. I have cut those ties, and she goes with her man through the jungle. I also will follow. I am old, but not yet toothless. Mother Wolf reared herself up on end and looked through the window into the dark of the hut. In a minute she dropped noiselessly, and all she said was, I gave thee thy first milk, but Bagheera speaks truth. Man goes to man at the last. And we will pause there.